Okay guys, so we are going to do day 1 of your homework, and so let's go ahead and get started, and y'all please do the work and don't just copy babies. Okay, so this first question says to get from point A to point B, you must avoid walking through a pond. To avoid the pond, you must walk 44 meters south and 41 meters east to the nearest meter. How many meters would be saved if it were possible to walk through the pond? So first, I read through that, so we're going to use our problem solving skills. I read through this first, and now I'm going to go and highlight the question, or if you don't have a highlighter, just underline the question. And I'm going to reread this question. It says, to the nearest meter, how many meters would be saved if it were possible to walk through the pond? So now I need to find out, I'm going to restate this, how many meters am I going to save if I need to walk across, if I can walk through the pond? Alright, so here it says now I need to go and figure out what I need to start putting together so I can answer this question of how much distance I'm going to save if I can walk across the pond with this situation. It says to get from point A to point B, you must avoid walking through the pond. So I got a point A and I got a point B. And in between A and B, I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture. There's a pond. So to get here, you have to go, to avoid the pond, you have to go south. It needs to go down. So you start here. And then it says east. East means to go to the right. And that's the path you had to walk. And you had to go 44 meters south and 41 meters east. All right. Now it's saying to the nearest meter, how many meters would I save if I can go across this pond here? So if I can just cut across the pond, how many meters did I actually save? So we are going to use Pythagorean Theorem so we can find what's the distance I would take if I just go across the pond. So Pythagorean Theorem says to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then I find this side. So you can call this A, and you can call this one B, or you can call this B, and you can call this A. And C is always the hypotenuse. So here we're going to go 44 squared, and anytime you substitute something into an equation, always put it in parentheses. 41 squared equals C squared. Okay, so we're going to grab our calculator. Alright, so we're going to say 44 squared, 44 squared plus 41 squared equals 3617 equals c squared. So we added those together, and now we're going to take the square root of 3617. And we're going to take the square root of c, because the inverse of something squared is to take the square root. So c is going to be 60.14. So here, I'm going to say this is 60.14. And that's 60.14 meters. So 60.14 meters is what the distance is from here to here. Now, it asked us how many meters would be saved. So I need to find what are the total meters I had to walk by going south and going east. So I would say 44 plus 41 equals 85. 85 meters is how far I had to actually go. So now I'm going to say 85 minus, if I go straight across, I get 60.14. And that said to round this answer to the nearest meter. So let's go pull that up. So I get 85 minus 60.14 is 24.86 meters, and it said to round to the nearest meter, so that's 25 meters. And so you answer the question, I would save 25 meters if you go across the pond instead. And that's it for that question. All right, let's go to the next one. It says Azaria and Imani run 8 miles north and 5 miles west. What is the shortest distance to the nearest tenth of a mile they must travel to return to their starting point? So I need to find out what's the shortest distance to the nearest tenth of a mile they must travel to return to their starting point. All right, so what's the shortest distance to get them back to where they started at? That's my rewording of this question. Now I'm going to go up here. It says Imani and Azaria runs 8 miles north and 5 miles west. So I'm going to draw a picture for that. So I'm going to assume they start here, and they're going to run north 8 miles, and then they run, okay, I need to move this over because west is to the left. So they run north, this is 8, and then they run west, which is 5. And then it says, what's the shortest distance? So Imani and Azaria ends up right here. And we need to find what's the shortest distance for them to get from where they finished at, to get from where they stopped at to get back to the starting point. So it looks like the shortest distance would be to just cut across. And if you notice, this formed a right triangle. So we're going to do Pythagorean Theorem. They started here and they finished here, so to get back to where they started, they're just going to cut across. So we're going to use Pythagorean's Theorem, the Pythagorean Theorem. So this is A, this is B, and we're trying to find C. So A squared plus 5 squared equals C squared. Okay, so now let's get this thing started. So if we do the math, this is 64 plus 25 equals C squared. If you add these two together, you get 89 equals C squared. Then you take the square root of 89, square root of C squared, because the inverse of something squared is to find the square root. So let's grab our calculator. Second inverse 89. Okay, so we get 9.43. I'm going to make sure I answer the question. It said to the nearest tenth. So they're going to go 9.4 miles to get back to the starting point. So the shortest distance is 9.4 miles. And we're finished. All right, so Austin's doghouse is shaped like a tent. The slanted sides are both 5 feet long, and the bottom of the house is 6 feet across. What is the height of his doghouse in feet at its tallest point? So I need to find out how tall is the doghouse. That's what I'm answering for this question. So now I need to go up here and start pulling out what they said. It says Austin's doghouse is shaped like a tent. So we know something is going to look like this, the shape of a tent, with something going down like that. It says the slanted sides are both 5 feet long. So I get 5 feet here, and I get 5 feet here. And the bottom of the house is 6 feet across. So this whole thing right here is 6 feet. It says, what is the height of his doghouse in feet at its highest point? So we need to find this part right here. That's what we need to try to find. So if we look, if this whole thing is 6, then I can say that this piece is 3 and this piece is 3. So you could choose either one of these sides. This forms a right triangle. So now we can just use Pythagorean Theorem to help us find this sides. So if we look, this is across from the right, from the hypotenuse, so this is C. I'm going to call this B, and I'm going to call this A. So I'm going to go with this triangle, and I'm going to highlight it. You don't have to solve for both. You can choose whichever one you want to. All right, so you get 3 squared plus, and you can call it X or A. I'm going to go with A. A squared equals 5 squared. Okay, so you get 9 plus A squared equals 25. So you're going to draw your line, solve your equation. The constants belong on the right side. So you get A squared equals 16. Now I need to say take the square root of both sides, because the inverse of something squared is to take the square root. Square root. So you get A equals 4. So that means the height is 4 feet tall. And we are finished with that one. All right. So now we're going to get to, it says find the missing side and round your answer to the nearest tenth. Well, if we look here, I can't use Pythagorean's theorem because I only have one side. So now we're going to have to use trig. So what I taught you in class is I'm going to use a star because I can't use my finger. I'm going to put my hand on the degree right here, and I'm going to label the sides. There's 2 sides your finger should be touching. The side that's across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. The other side that your finger is touching is always the adjacent. And the side that you're not touching, that the star isn't touching, is the opposite side. So now it looks like we're going to have to use some trig. So I'm going to write out so, ka, toa. And the way I learned it in high school, and it's funny, but we've had our own little thing where we said some old hood rat caught another hood rat taking off Adidas. That's how we did it. So the information that I have labeled is I have an adjacent side and an opposite side. So it looks like the trig function that matches that is going to be tan. So I'm going to say tan of 49 equals opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to go 14 over x. Now I'm going to go and draw the little circle. The tan goes here, so I'm going to say tan of 49. The opposite goes up here, so that's going to be 14. And the adjacent goes right here, which is going to be the x. And so this is telling me that if you put your finger, if you put your finger on the x, that tells you that x equals 14 over tan of 49. And then you're going to grab your calculator. I'm going to show you guys, if you don't have a calculator at home, I'm going to show you Desmos so you can put this, you can use Desmos to help you. And this will be the technology that you can use for your EOC. So here, I'm going to go to Desmos. Scientific calculator. And I am going to